Hi, this is Misha, and kind of my ongoing look at various fleets. We're up to the Borg. Why not? Why not? They have been a noteworthy adversary for a number of years. Love them or hate them. So let's look at what the Borg have come up with over time. And I wanted to start with this critter here from Eaglemoss. Honestly, probably one of their better models, at least for me, because this thing is very tactile. Good grief, there's a lot of detail going on. I can really feel it, and from what I've read, there's actually probably not a lot to look at. It's mostly just feeling. This is the Assimilated Arctic 1 survey craft from an actually pretty darn good episode of Enterprise, about when Enterprise was starting to decide to get good. This started off as a civilian Earthcraft with limited warp drive and no weapons, and it just did that. Luckily it itself is on its stand well, or on the little sticky thing. But it's interesting because what the designers were going to do with this is kind of what I always assumed the Borg did. They don't really have shipyards and construct ships. They kind of grow them in a electronic fashion, in a mechanical fashion, because they took parts from a Tarkalian ship, put it on this. They bulked it up about 40 to 50%. They added proton bursts and beam cutting weapons, the classic beam cutter. They upped the warp drive from under 2 up to just under 5 warp speed. Warp 5. And of course they kept assimilating people. And the producers have said that if they were, if this was allowed to grow, it would have turned into a cube or a sphere. So I think all, or at least most Borg ships started off as someone else's, and then they just kept adapting. And this thing, even though it was a civilian craft over the episode, was upgraded. And yeah, just a neat model, and kind of confirmed what I always thought about the Borg. Speaking of sphere, this is probably the second most common Borg shape, because most of their ships are geometrical shapes. To be fair, I wasn't really excited about this one, model-wise. I mean, it's got nice patterning. The one thing I don't like about it, it has good weight, but it has these holes on either end to stick it in the base. I understand why they put a little stud to stick it in, but I really wish they had just maybe done one end, not both. This is really the only ship they did like this, where you can mount it either direction. I don't really like that because it leaves this on the top. But other than that, it's a neat model. This is a very common Borg ship, first in, first contact. And it seems to come in several different sizes, or maybe they grow over time. Seems like they can have a crew of maybe 6,000 to 11,000. And these would have names like Sphere 123, Sphere 456. They would have basically the geometrical shape. Maybe the Borg are like Sesame Street. It kind of has that, shape and number. If they just add like color, then again it would pretty much be black, gray, and green, right? So maybe that's why they don't do it. But this is a very common thing. They were used as patrol ships, scouts. There's also tactical spheres, and they were quite powerful for what they were. And quite large. I don't know if there's an exact size. Again, they kind of grow and change, but excuse me. But pretty iconic, and it kind of goes well with the Borg motif. Moving on, we have the so-called Borg Renegades ship. Burp. It's an interesting ship. This was really the second Borg ship we saw on the screen. It's been called a Type 3, or Class 3. And some think it might be a mine layer, which seems a little odd and specific for Borg. It was in that episode with Lore and the Borg and Hugh and all that. I actually met the actor who played Hugh back at conventions. But, unique ship. I like the model, but it's a little smaller than I was hoping for, and it does not want to stay in its base. That's why I actually had to put a little blue tack on it to keep it in there. But it's a neat model, and it's one of those things that only really Eaglemoss would probably be expected to do, because it's just kind of an oddball. This was quite large, although smaller than a cube, and it was more powerful than a Galaxy class, it seems. At least that's what people in the episode tended to indicate. It seemed like it was a stronger Borg critter, but it was no match for a star, a frickin' star, so that'll do it every time, won't it? Yeah. We'll call it a Renegade for lack of any other better name. Moving on, we have one of the newer releases from Eaglemoss, the probe ship, or the coffin ship, or the peanut-shaped ship. I like this. It's large. It scales well with Voyager. It's about 340 meters. It's supposed to have about the same firepower as Voyager. I get that it's pretty plain, but it's a Borg ship. I mean, what do you expect? Now, it is mostly all plastic, but one thing that people often don't point out, it does have metal inside, kind of a core. I'm sure this was done to give it kind of what am I trying to think of here? Stability, durability, if that makes sense. This was again a scout ship, a patrol ship. Maybe it's similar to what Q was on when it blew up, but I think it has a crew of more than 5, so it is what it is. But I'm glad they made it. Again, we don't have enough Borg ships even on screen or in the Eaglemoss set. Next up, we have the so-called Queen's Diamond. I believe this first appeared in Season 5 of Voyager. I like this model. It's got a good chunk of metal in it, and it's unique while still kind of sticking with the whole Borg aesthetic. It's about as complicated as you're going to get a Borg ship and still keep it, well, Borg. It seems to be less powerful than a cube, but still brilliantly powerful, and it also seems to be maybe not necessarily just for the Queen, but maybe like a fast ship. It seems like it's got pretty good speed to it. I'm sure it's trans-warp capable. I mean, if it's the Queen's, what she chooses to use. Say what you will about the Queen. I had mixed feelings about them adding it as well, but it is what it is, and I understand why thematically they needed to have a face to the Borg. For some reason they had Locutus, but obviously he was kind of a limited adversary. Now on to the first of the cube. This is the standard issue cube. It's technically a tactical cube. It's essentially about the same size, maybe it's just a little bit smaller than a normal cube, but it's armored. People debate if it's stronger or actually weaker than a standard cube, but it's definitely used for tactical purposes. It's a neat model, like the probe. It's mostly polymer, plastic, but it does have some metal core. And it is kind of unique on each side. Again, visually I don't know how interesting it is to look at, but it's pretty neat to feel. This was pretty much exclusive to Voyager and was their, yeah, just to give a cube a different thing. And to wrap things up, of course, the normal cube. Let me find her here, guys. There she is. Now if I can point you at her. This is the Eaglemoss kind of gift or special edition cube. It's reasonably large. It scales well with many other ships. It is plastic. It is also light up. It's not great, but you know, it's a representation of the best of both worlds of the Q-Hue cube, which even the studio model wasn't super fancy. It doesn't have a base or anything. Doesn't come with the magazine. It's just a box. This is the quintessential Borg from Next Generation, also seen as a cameo in Deep Space Nine. And yeah, I tend to think of this as like a long-range exploration and assimilating jobber. Size is hard to determine. Some say about 3,100 meters, but other sources seem to indicate it's more. And crew can be about 60,000 up to about 130,000, maybe even more if it's just finished eating a civilization. But one of these seems capable of taking an entire civilization if they want to. It's the big Borg box, and this has been in other videos because it fits with like the Wolf 359 and the Sector 001 battle. It's the Borg. It's supposed to be decentralized, all that. So I know the Borg haven't been a perfect villain, but they're, I think, memorable no matter what you think. And they've had good actresses, especially the first one playing the Queen, so at least it was hammy in a good way. And they're certainly memorable. I guess part of it for me was they came out when I was young enough to actually still be kind of, you know, afraid of or, you know, intimidated by fictional things, which is always helpful. As we know, the first attack the Borg had against the Federation was in 2364. They did an early pass through the neutral zone, possibly the same ship that the Hansons were caught up in, who knows. Voyager continuity isn't awesome, I know. Kind of bugs me too, guys, but it is what it is. I don't get too bent out of shape because it's all fiction. But then there was Best of Both Worlds, Battle of Wolf 359 and 2366, and then Sector 001 and 2373. And aside from incidents with Voyager, that's pretty much all we know, at least on screen. I know there's, you know, books and things, so that's the Borg for you. And of course, they change as the plot demands. Honestly, when they first came out, they were super overpowered, so I understand why they changed it. Well, this is Misha. I appreciate you tuning in. If you could, please like and subscribe. Check out my other videos, and I will catch you next time.